Hey everyone, welcome to another YouTube Live. In this video, we're going to be talking about Beyond Meat, breaking it down, talking about the price action from the IPO to the current price action that's happening with a little bit of a bullish push that we've been seeing, retesting a key zone of previously broken level of support, which is going to be a new level of resistance. But overall, we're just going to be talking about the first couple months of the IPO. We were covering it for a little bit within the Discord here, and this is the chart that we drew up talking about two key ascending trend lines. We saw the first one connect the candle closure of one candle to the anchor point with the double bottom there, and then a nice level of respected zone making higher lows. And then we saw a massive gap up, which then created our second trend, which has the less ascending trend line that has many zones of support being held, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all along here is the fifth one. And talking about how this zone, if it gets broken, could be a really good shift in trend area that we could potentially use to capture profits on the short side. To the downside, unfortunately, we don't really trade equities. We're mainly focusing on the cryptocurrency market, but just going to go over the what actually happened after this point. We definitely only focus really on the crypto market at this point on, and a little bit in commodities. But we do sometimes like to look back at the equities market, and then we sometimes cover, like we covered Tesla today, and then we're also going to cover Beyond Meat. But overall, we're more into the crypto scene. So let's still go over this. Just wanted to cover this explanation and what happened afterwards. So these are the two trend lines that we covered within the previous video. I think this trend line was a little bit more ascending, kind of like so, where we saw the price come a little bit closer down. But overall, this is the structure of the two trend lines that we saw. And let's just quickly go over the market structure that we've had. So basically, this was the IPO, and then we've had a very strong bullish push with the 1 hour candle to make that initial high, and then we held a support. So we're basically making higher highs and higher lows. So this is a high, this is a low, made a higher low from the IPO, and this was a higher high, this was a higher low from the previous low, and this was a higher high from the previous high, and this was a higher low. And then we had the massive gap up, and we had some crazy mania occur right here. Look at all these gaps, look at that massive gap, and then the huge rejection down, huge gap down, massive bullish push. There was so many things that were going on within that little time frame. If you were a day trader, if you had weak hands, that's a lot to go through. That's the definite is challenging going through that if you are a trader and you are trying to capture trades, let's say, because the gaps is one thing and the level of volatility is completely something else. So just talking about the actual momentum, because in theory, yes, we are having these crazy gaps, but this is a high, or this is a low, this is a low, this is a higher low, this is a higher low, and we're very well holding a nice ascending support all along here. So overall, we are seeing those higher lows, which is good. We saw a strong level of resistance right here with a massive gap above this zone, which created our second level of resistance, but that filled right away, pushing our price back below our key level of resistance. And then we basically had a nice pop up on the hour chart, had a little pullback, not really coming to the full level of the support that would be ideal, but soon after we got that massive green bullish candle, and then we've been basically went on another roar, breaking the previous level of resistance. So there's a lot that happened within that massive move to the upside since the IPO. I don't exactly know what the P&L or the increase in price was from the IPO. Let's just look right here. So from the IPO to basically the very peak, we were sitting at around 420%. So that's a massive, massive move. Ended high of around 230, maybe 240. And then we IPO'd at 45-ish, $46. So it was a huge push to the upside. And then we talked about that shift in trend that could appear if we do break that zone. Now, we didn't break it. We completely gapped below it, and we couldn't get back up. And here's that resistance that we talked about a little bit before. We can see that right here. Let's get our zone. We also see nice head and shoulders at the very peak, but we'll just quickly touch on that and then get to what we really wanted to discuss. Here is the neckline, and here is the left shoulder, right shoulder, and then we have our head right here. I'll just draw it in. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder, and then once we gapped down, that was A, the first major bearish signal. B, we made a lower low. This is the new lower low. This is a low. That's the second market structure signal. And then we also see the price break our ascending trend line, which is now going to be a new level of resistance, 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 which is going to be a third level of confirmation that this price is going to go towards the downside. So let's discuss at the actual breakdown. We see the price initially push down below the zone and have a couple wicks protruding above the body of the candle, but we are not able to actually pass this key level of the trend line, indicating that there is sell pressure within the market. That's definitely the first thing. The second thing, we see not once, not twice, but 3 times the price hold a recent high, and the price could not make a higher high. That is a very strong sign that the sellers are present and are strong and are going to gain control over the market. Now, once that happened, we didn't get any pullback or anything, no double confirmation, nothing. We got a straight move straight to the downside and then onto a recent support. We see gaps here, we see resistance here, which is going to be providing a new level of support right there. So we saw the price straight move to the downside, no pullback, nothing, and hold a nice little level of support. Now we're looking for double confirmation retests before we move and look to the downside. So what are we looking for? We're looking for potential double tops. We're looking for engulfing candles. This one's red, and this one, the first one is green, and then the second one is red, meaning a bearish engulfing candle. We're looking for potential, oops, that was a really bad line. We're looking for potential breaks and supports there, something along the lines of that, some indication that is going to provide us with sell pressure. And what we see right here is that exact thing. Just going over our criteria for the markets and how we trade. Look at the other YouTube videos. We follow this exact same strategy within the crypto markets, but just going over what our method is within this chart. So we have 2 zones where we have not 1, but 2 areas where the sellers are going to say, yes, this is an area I want to start selling at and put some sell pressure within the market. We see a double top here, and then what do we see after? We see the price break the previous level of support. We see right here, previous level of resistance, resistance, new support, break the new level of support. An early entry would have been this bearish engulfing candle right there. That would have definitely been an early entry because we got our first injection of sell pressure right here, and then now we see our second injection of sell pressure, giving us confirmation that there's going to be sellers within this area, also looking at the previous zones on the chart. So that is the first level we could enter at, or if you wanted to be very safe and if you wanted to take the more cautious approach to your trading, you could then wait for the price to break your previous level of support and then even potentially validate it for a new level of resistance if you want to be really sure, but you might lose a couple trades because sometimes the price, like it happens here, doesn't pull back all the way or just starts dumping from that point onwards. But overall, this is a well-structured chart. The flow was very, very nice. It was fluid. It really moved well with the overall structure of the price action. And then we see a push to the downside, hold some level of support there, and then we make our way all the way back up, touching our previous level of resistance, yet again validating this key zone within the chart, and then we make our massive move to the downside. So I just want to talk about this zone here on the 4-hour chart before we move to the actual drop in price. We already talked about the head and shoulders here that appeared, and then we'll also talk about a potential head and shoulders that could have appeared here. Not really, because this massive gap to the upside did kind of close off all head and shoulders situations, because if this was not here, let's say this was not present, what we could see is a nice head and shoulders kind of here where we can get our head and shoulders, which is, I think, this guy, head and shoulders. So if we have our left shoulder, let's say that major zone actually didn't appear, and that would be our right shoulder, and now that would be the completion of the overall price action pattern. So that could have been appearing, but unfortunately this gap up invalidated this price action pattern. So what happened afterwards? Yes, we can put this horizontal zone here because we see it respect around here, as well as this key zone. We probably would have put it up here at the beginning, and then we respect here again, and then we held. After this point of a break, we didn't really see much of a pullback or anything, and that's something that we want to keep in mind. But overall, looking at the structure of the price action, we see lower highs, barely able to hold a level of support. So we see a high here, we see another high. This is the same level of high respecting this key zone of a resistance. We probably could draw in a nice ascending support there, and once we broke, retested a horizontal zone of resistance, and then fell back down below our area. And then we found a lower high with a huge rejection right back down. And then we're seeing these continuous lower highs that are forming, which is signifying that the sellers have strength, the sellers have confidence, because the bulls are not able to get the price to form higher highs. It's forming lower highs, which is less bullish overall. So we see these lower highs, and the price is holding a support. We can see that right here, especially when this one came in. That is definitely a key level of support right here. And then when this one, that's like the biggest confirmation you can have, is 3 very key zones on the 4-hour or daily. That is going to signify a long-term, well-defined support or resistance, especially when it's an IPO and you don't have any information beforehand. That's going to be very key, because everyone's going to be looking at the same zones if you have an IPO or an ICO, whereas if you've had a chart that's been trading for years or decades, like the FX market, there's going to be a lot of zones that people are going to be looking at, because there's a lot of historical price action that's already been taken place. But with an IPO, you have a very fresh chart, or unless you break in a new all-time high or all-time low, then that you'd get the exact same situation there. So after the break here, we didn't get any pullback whatsoever. We kind of got a gap down from here to here, and then we slowly fell, just not getting any real buy volume within the market. So we don't have a pullback at this zone. So that's a key thing that we wanted to discuss, is after we had that bearish move to the downside, we held a support 1, 2, 3, not being able to make a lower low. That signifies an area where there's a volume accumulation now occurring. We see more buy volume coming in a little bit more than the sell volume. Surprisingly, we saw in a tremendous amount of sell volume when we saw the pullback validating the previous level of resistance as a new level of support. We see that right here. Key level of resistance turn into new level of support right here. And also the similar situation where there's a gap down, which is now going to be a level of resistance, like so. It turns into a potential new level of support before blasting off. Overall, on the daily candle or the daily chart here, the main thing we want to discuss is this pullback right here. So the main reason I'm talking about this chart in specific is because a lot of people are very bullish, because we saw a 60-ish% move. I think it was 78. We're closing at around 60, 70-ish%. That was, I guess, initially why people thought that this would start to explode up and push. But what I want to just really illustrate when we're looking at the daily is how strong this level of resistance is, which is now going to be our new level of support. And we haven't seen any pullback when we initially broke the zone. We didn't see any validation of a new level of support. And we have first and then second level of a validation that there's going to be a level of support, or a new level of a resistance here. So for me, just with the current price action that is being shown, I'm not looking too bullish. We had an ascending trend line here that broke to the downside. We'll cover that in a little bit within the market, but we see big wick here, a big rejection here, so 2 major rejections. We see an ascending trend line that broke, retested for a new level of resistance, and then pushed further down. And overall, unless we're able to see this level of support hold right here and here and here, I think the price is going to continue to the downside, test these zones, and then move down further. So overall, the IPOs haven't been awesome. Beyond Meat has been basically, it's at the IPO now. Lyft, there's one example there that is at a similar structure. We got to push up and then it's falling down. GoPro is another one where it had a push to the upside and then it came back down, and then now it's trading much lower than the IPO, but it had a meteoric rise and fall. We'll talk about that within the same video here after we go over this current price action. But overall, it does kind of look like this pattern where you get a big rise. Maybe that was a little under exaggerated. So you get a big rise and then you get a fall, and then you retest a major key zone within the chart as a new level of resistance, which was held as a support multiple times, and then you get the fall back down. So let's look at GoPro after discussing what we can see within this price action pattern over here. First, just quickly looking at it on the 4-hour, and then we'll discuss looking at the smaller time frames. So let's look at this key level on the chart right here. First, it was a level of resistance, then it turned into support before a massive gap to the downside. It blasted off, making the key level touch on the resistance there, held as a support, made the second touch, and then now we're falling back down. Now let's break it to the 1-hour chart to discuss the key ascending trend line that I was talking about. It's this zone right here, I believe. right there. And we could just do it at the wick there. I think that would be a better fit. Yeah, that's definitely a better fit. So we got a nice ascending trend line making an ascending triangle, pushing the price towards the apex of the pattern. Let's get our snip here. So we got our horizontal zone, which is our descend, or which is our resistance, keeping the price below a certain area. We have an anchor point with multiple touches here, a touch here, and a touch here, validating this zone as an ascending support, squeezing the price towards the apex of the pattern, which is going to be right here. The price has to make a decision either to go to the upside or to the downside, and then the price made a choice to go to the downside, and we're just quickly going to talk about the downside move that occurred. So if it breaks to either direction, we're looking for horizontal support or resistance. If it breaks to the upside, it's very easy because we already are using that horizontal zone in order to see if the price is going to break an area. But if we're using an ascending zone, it's a little bit more challenging because we don't exactly know what horizontal zone we're going to use in order to risk off of it. So what we have to do is first initially look where we broke out of, which is right here. Let's get our marker. We broke out right here, so we're looking for key areas within that zone. Well, the first area of resistance I can initially see is going to be this zone right around here. It was the first. Let's try to make that a little bit more flat. It's not going to be perfect because I'm using just a line there. So it's this zone right around there where it was initially a resistance, it was a support, it was a resistance, it was a resistance, it was a support, it was a resistance. So this is the first initial zone that I'm going to be looking at within the chart. And then the next zone, let's just erase these guys so we have a clear chart that we're able to identify, is going to be this area. It's not perfect. Theoretically, it would have been better to actually do it off the other chart. So this area right over here. Let's just get this right here because it's a little easier to draw charts off. This area right here was our second mid-range zone, and then we're going to talk about the resistance that we had, which was right here. We can see that very clearly. Let's just make it a little bigger so we have a really well-defined area within the chart. So let's break this down with our mid-range zones. This is the key level of supply. And then this is our last level of demand before we see probably a pretty sharp drop in price. So now we have our resistance and support. We can talk about our mid-range zones. So this is our first mid-range zone right here. And that's where we're going to potentially see the price because we have a zone of confluence from the ascending zone and the horizontal resistance. So this is our first level of confluence. If the price fails to hold this zone, we're now going to look to enter at this zone because we have a zone of confluence right here, and we probably have a lot of sellers panicking or selling at this zone, and we could probably see an ascending trend line coming somewhere around there. So that would have been the second area to enter if this current resistance failed, but it did not. We see a support hold there, support hold there, support hold there, support hold there. We saw 1-2 injections of buy volume. We see a massive rejection in sell volume, signifying very, very strong sell pressure and confidence and conviction from the bears. And then what did we see after? We saw the price break our previous level of support, and then we tested as a new level of resistance, not one with this very significant wick right here, but also two, and then this bearish engulfing candle signifies the entry for the short if you're already not trying to entering from this wick here. And we got a nice push, double top. Also, there's a lot of things that are indicating within this consolidation here that there's a lot of sell pressure, but that bearish engulfing candle for the second major rejection, there's really three here. So we got one, and then we got a couple of rejections here, a couple of rejection there, and this was that big bearish engulfing candle that we should have identified for the entry signal for this particular short if you were playing this particular setup, because it's a horizontal zone. We retested once, we retested twice, key level of support. There's a lot of things going on here that signify that this is a high probability to at least make it down to our demand zone, which is going to be right here, signified in the previous historic price action. But also we can see that there is going to be some level of buy pressure. We can see right here, although there's a massive bearish engulfing candle there that signifies a lot of strength from the bears. So overall, that is looking pretty bearish in my view. I don't know if I'd be looking to invest or trade BNB for a long. If anything, I'd actually potentially look for a short as a continuation potentially to the lows here. Let's get our 6-hour chart of the lows right here. That would have been a pretty good situation if we were able to capture this point here to the low, which would be a pretty good move. Let's just look, 30% would be pretty good. So that is the overall structure of, why do the candles look very odd there? I think it's just because I'm using a 6-hour chart. Yeah, looked a little bit odd there, but overall, that is my outlook on Beyond Meat. There was some people in our Discord who were talking about it, who were kind of discussing this as a potential trade for the long because we saw a move to the upside and it's a pullback. And theoretically, if we are able to hold above the $100 mark, I think there could be a potential play. But if we're breaking beyond that, kind of breaking down, I don't think that it would be a really good situation. So now that we've discussed this, we can now come to GoPro and just talk about the situation that occurred on GoPro because it kind of had a similar structure. We're not really going to be diving deep into it, but I just wanted to point out one zone within the price action that I wanted to discuss and how it kind of looked like the trade that we are seeing with Beyond Meat here. So we saw the IPO monster move up. We saw the price hold a zone of support multiple times, which is this area right here. We saw the price hold the zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the price broke. This time we did get a pullback at this area right here, so we got a move to the upside. We broke a key level of support, retested as a new level of resistance, and then dropped down further. So that is a significant level that we did validate, so we theoretically did need to validate it again. But looking at the price action, it kind of looks similar to Beyond Meat in that it makes this, so let's say this is the IPO, it makes this move. And what you're looking for is for this zone here where, okay, I think I can be a little bit more descriptive. Let's just try to remember. Kind of like here. So we see it made a high, it made a higher high, it made a lower high, and then we draw in our support here, and then we retest it as a new level of resistance, and that's exactly what we see here, where we see it move up. We see maybe like a head and shoulders kind of appearance here if you really kind of squint. But basically, you see a move up holding a key level of support. Once the support breaks, you're looking for a bit of consolidation to find a support. This was not a flat support, but it was a bit of a jagged move, making those lower highs, turning them very quickly into higher highs and higher lows instead of lower lows and lower highs. And then we retested our key zone within the chart, and then we basically had a fall straight down to where we're currently sitting, which is not very awesome. We can see it's basically at like $3, $4-ish when we were at one point at basically $100. So basically 99% drop, or 98% drop in price, whatever it's at right now, or what it was trading at, $3, and 97% drop in price. So pretty staggering, but just be careful. Always use TA. Make sure that you're setting stops. There's a lot that goes into simple risk management that you can use in order to not get absolutely wrecked with investments. For example, very simple. If it goes below the IPO price, sell it. Or if it goes below a key level of support or resistance that you've identified on a major key level, like a daily chart, 4-hour, or even weekly chart, if you're not looking at IPOs, that makes sense. If it's a fake out, you can always come back in. Yeah, you'll lose some percentages, but it beats holding a really shitty investment for X many years or even decades, or just never selling it and having, 100,000 shares of something that's worth 1 penny. That's not really something that you're looking to do, and you're looking to cut your losses and try your very best to be disciplined with that, because in life it's really easy to hold on to losers, because hope in a human being is a very strong characteristic and very strong emotion that is tied to investments and overall investing. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was a quick comparison with GPro as well as our Beyond Meat. Not saying the company's not going to go up in value anymore. It's just my personal analysis on how a lot of these IPOs go, especially because the vegan, food market, yes, Beyond Meat has a huge supply and a very good grasp on the restaurants and chains that are actually implementing their products. But over time, there will be other products within the market that will be able to be just as good, just as cheap, just as quality of product overall, in my opinion, and there will be a significant shift because the whole plant-based protein meal, or diet, is definitely shifting, and there's more people going into that. So I do think it's going to be a solid sector for the long-term possible investments. But overall, I don't want to hold something like this, and I'd rather see a chart that has a little bit more strength and a little bit more power and a little bit more conviction to move to the upside before I actually look to invest. So hope this brought you some level of value or some level of knowledge or something that will provide you with a little golden nugget that will be able to provide you with something of value in the near future that you can act upon, that's an actionable chart pattern or the way you see your markets or whatever the case may be. I hope you enjoyed it. If you don't know what the Discord is, we provide a free community where traders alike trading in crypto, stocks, forex, commodities, you name it, we come together in a large community that is able to provide video services, so you can talk to one another in a voice chat or just chat or whatever the case may be. There is a lot to go around in terms of discussions and in terms of value, in terms of knowledge, in terms of just good content. So if you're not in it now, definitely advise you entering it right now. Good to see that we do have an actual live individual within our chats. But that was the end of the video. Unfortunately, you're coming in basically at the very end. But all of these lives will be available on our YouTube channel that we will post. We're basically just recording our live chats and then posting them on YouTube and then seeing basically what sticks, because we're doing not just crypto now, we're covering other asset classes as well. So I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, happy trading. Have a lovely rest of the week. It's early in the week. Hopefully you guys had a good Monday, and let's start off Tuesday just as strong, if not stronger.